everybody for joining us for our call this afternoon. I'm very excited to be talking with all of you today about an exciting new opportunity that Advance CTE is going to be leading over the next couple of years as we launch our Advancing Postsecondary CTE Data Quality Initiative. My name is Austin Estes, for those of you who I don't know on the call. I'm the manager of data and research here with Advance CTE. And I'm also joined today by two of my colleagues, Kate Kramer, who's the Deputy Executive Director with Advance CTE, and Brian Robinson, who's a policy associate with us. Just as a quick housekeeping note before we jump in, Brian is helping me coordinate and run the meeting today. So if you have any questions or issues related to technology, please feel free to shoot him a message directly. If you're having trouble hearing or seeing anything, he can help you out there. He's also going to be monitoring the Q&A chat throughout the conversation. So I want to encourage everybody. I'm going to be sharing a lot of information over the webinar today. If you have any questions or would like to interject throughout the presentation, please feel free to do so. You can just drop your questions into the Q&A chat box, and I can address some of those questions as we go through. We'll also have a little bit of time at the end of the webinar for some open Q&A if I haven't addressed anything at that point. Everybody is able to control your own, you can monitor muting on your end, so please make sure to control background noise. If you do want to jump in and ask a question, you can unmute yourself, but we would ask that you keep yourself on mute in the meantime, just to prevent any kind of crosstalk. And then finally, this conversation is being recorded. We want to make sure that this is available for those who aren't able to join today's call. So just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that. You will be able to access this information after the fact, but I also just want to make sure everybody knows that this will be available publicly. So just keep that in mind. So I'm excited today to be talking about the Postsecondary CTE Data Quality Initiative that Advance CTE will be leading. This is a new multi-year, multi-state initiative that is being supported with funding from the ECMC Foundation. And on our call today, I'm going to start by providing a little bit of background information about Advance CTE's work on data quality. I'm going to share some details kind of at the broad strokes level about the initiative, and then talk about the process and expectations for applications. And again, I want to also make sure to address any questions that folks have about the initiative. We've uploaded the RFA as well as the application and budget template to our website at careertech.org/initiatives. If anybody has any questions about those documents, happy to address those later, or other questions that are not covered there. So first, by way of some national context, Advance CTE back in 2018 issued a national survey of state CTE directors to get a better understanding of what data states are able to collect, how they're collecting it, and what they're doing with their data. And what we learned through that survey is probably unsurprising to many of the folks on the call today. Largely, we saw that states' data systems are built to meet the reporting and data collection requirements of the Perkins Act and to address the annual consolidated annual reporting requirements, but that there are a lot of limitations around how those data systems are designed and how the data are actually used to inform practice and inform policy. So one of the takeaways that we had from the report is that a lot of states are relying on self-reported data, specifically using student surveys to measure outcomes such as further education and training or further employment after completing a program. Another takeaway is that there's a lot of inconsistency in how states are defining different career readiness indicators and how they're setting business rules for some of those. So for example, at the time that we issued the survey back in 2018, many states said that they were collecting data on work-based learning, but several of those that said they were collecting data did not have a clear definition set up for what would be considered a work-based learning experience. We also saw some disparities in the states that are collecting data on industry-recognized credential attainment without having set a vetted list of credentials of value. So one of the big challenges that we surfaced is figuring out how to bring those into alignment, make sure that there are better rules and definitions around the data that are being collected. Another major challenge that came through from the survey is a lack of alignment across education levels and across program areas. So 28% of the states that we surveyed said that their CTE data systems were mostly or fully aligned with their post-secondary systems. So about 70% said that their data systems are not aligned at the post-secondary level. And even beyond that, 18% said that they were mostly or fully aligned with workforce data. So there are some pretty significant challenges and issues there, especially considering that CTE is an educational approach that spans secondary education, post-secondary education, and workforce. So figuring out how to link data across sectors and follow students as they progress along their career pathway is essential to making sure that those students are being served and that they're achieving the outcomes that we would want. And then one of the last things that we learned from the survey is that there's a disconnect between the data that states are collecting and decisions around policy and practice. So a lot of states are hesitant to use their data to make high stakes decisions related to program approval, program funding, and other such activities. However, we did see that a lot of them are using their data to inform policy and to inform technical assistance and supports at the local level, which is a pretty promising finding to see. So there's also a lot of other national context too that makes this work even more relevant, and a lot of changes that have happened since our survey was issued back in 2018 that also add further context. So one of those is prioritization and emphasis on access and equity for career technical education programs. Specifically, we know that there are countless barriers to accessing and succeeding in high quality career pathways, including financial needs, mental and physical health, family needs, academic barriers, and even simply figuring out how to navigate career pathways opportunities. And these barriers result in the underrepresentation of students of color, students with disabilities, students from economically disadvantaged families, and other special populations in high quality career pathways and in post-secondary credential programs. So that's one of the objectives for our focus on improving data quality is ensuring that states are better using their data to identify these opportunity gaps and address some of the policy and practice barriers that that might be causing some friction along students' career pathways. This also comes at a time when states are transitioning to a new era of CTE through the Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act, or as is more commonly known, Perkins 5. Perkins 5 heralded a new era of CTE that was focused on program improvement, equity, and data-informed decision-making. And while the law largely retains the same structure of Perkins 4, it does make quite a few adjustments in the area of data and accountability through the performance accountability structures, new definitions for CTE concentrators at the secondary and post-secondary level, as well as new special populations, the introduction of the comprehensive local needs assessment, which is a data-driven process, and new opportunities for identifying and addressing disparities in access and success. And I will note that the survey that we issued in 2018 was sent out to states before Perkins 5 passed, or right around the time that Perkins 5 passed. So in the past 2 years, we've seen some developments and a lot of work around improving data systems and improving the use of data. So if we were to issue that survey again this year, we would expect to see some different responses. And then the recent global pandemic and the resulting economic recession add further urgency to this work. We already know that millions of students nationwide had to transition to remote learning in the spring, and it's still uncertain whether and to what degree institutions can open up in the fall. So we know that the delivery of education, particularly the post-secondary level, is undergoing a pretty significant shift at the moment. And what's more, we've seen a record high unemployment over the past couple of months, with nearly 15% of the adult population out of work. And so there's even more urgency around building robust, high quality pathways to allow learners and out of workforce individuals to build the skills that they need and to access the credentials that they'll need for supporting the economic recovery once the pandemic has abated. So all of that brings us to the Post-Secondary CTE Data Quality Initiative. So the objectives for the initiative are to build capacity at the state and local level to improve CTE data quality and better meet the needs of post-secondary learners. We're also hoping to improve data quality, literacy, and use in the states that are part of the cohort, as well as nationwide. Want to create a peer sharing network among state leaders and within selected states so that states can learn from one another and adopt each other's best practices. And then we also, as an organization, want to identify those best practices and share them broadly so that other states can learn from and replicate those practices that we know are working. The initiative will officially launch this fall in September and will be a full 2-year initiative, concluding in December of 2022. Our plan is to select a cohort of up to 4 states, and those states will receive supports in the form of planning and implementation grants totaling $80,000 over 2 years. They'll also receive technical assistance from Advance CTE and from other subject matter experts throughout the initiative. They'll be involved in a community of practice and will have multiple opportunities to engage with one another virtually through a virtual community practice forum, as well as hopefully in person once it is safe again to have large gatherings. And then there will also be a national convening in fall 2022, where all of the participating states will gather to share lessons learned and talk about sustainability plans. Again, hoping that at that point we will be able to gather once again. So I'm going to quickly go through each of these different state supports. So I mentioned the planning and implementation grants. These will be dispersed in 3 increments. So states will receive $15,000 to support planning later this fall. And the focus for the fall will be completing a data needs assessment and putting together a 2-year action plan and budget. Receipt of funding for the planning grant is conditional on the approval of the proposed budget for the planning grant, as well as the execution of the grant agreement, which we hope we'll be able to complete in either late September or early October to give states an opportunity to get started right away. The first of the 2 implementation grants will total $40,000, and that'll be dispersed in early 2021. And those funds will be conditioned on the approval of the action plan and the 2-year budget. And then the last disbursement will be in early 2022. That will be a $25,000 implementation grant, which will be conditional on the submission of the year 1 grant report. Technical assistance will be provided throughout the initiative. This will be based on the needs that are identified in the needs assessment and in the state's action plan, and will be provided either by Advance CTE or by other subject matter experts, depending on the specific needs of the state. And these supports can be used for a variety of different needs, including doing background research, facilitating strategic planning meetings, or other types of activities and supports. Again, one of the objectives for the initiative is fostering peer learning and creating an environment where states can learn from one another and replicate each other's best practices. And so we will be creating a virtual community of practice for folks to share ideas and problems of practice and to learn from one another. We will also have scheduled meetup opportunities at Advance CTE's spring and fall meetings. Again, depending on whether we are able to gather once again. And then there will be a final meetup in the fall of 2022. And this will be a national convening for states to gather within the cohort, as well as to share their best practices and lessons learned with a national audience. And as part of the initiative, those states that are selected to be a part of the cohort, their travel and registration will be covered for up to 5 individuals to participate in that national convening in fall 2022. And then last but not least, concurrent to the work that states will be doing to implement their 2-year action plans, Advance CTE is going to develop a number of tools and resources to support and highlight the work that states are doing. And this will include our CTE data quality policy benchmark tool, which will kind of serve as the foundation for the needs assessment and action planning that's taking place this fall. There will be a summative white paper at the end of the initiative, as well as tools, case studies, and other resources, and a webinar series to continue to create spaces for learning and for sharing. So I have more information to share about the application process, but I want to just pause briefly to see if we've got any questions about the objectives for the initiative, about the supports that Advance CTE is providing, or any other related questions. And Brian, have we had anything come through in the chat yet?
No, not yet.
All right. So are there any questions that anybody would like me to address now? All right. Hearing none, I will move on. And again, if you do have questions, please feel free to use that chat box and drop them in, or we'll have time at the end for some Q&A. So I want to talk a little bit about state expectations, and this is all detailed in the RFA that we released and posted on Advance CTE's website. So to complete an application, states will be expected to convene a cross-sector team. The focus for the initiative is on post-secondary CTE data quality. But as I mentioned before, one of the major challenges and barriers that we surfaced through our survey is a lack of alignment across education levels and across sectors. So we want to make sure that even if this initiative is being led by the post-secondary system, that representatives from the K-12 agency, from the workforce agency, and others are represented and are part of the project. We also want to make sure that there is a representation from local practitioners as well. So there's a requirement that state teams include a representative from one post-secondary institution within the state to provide that local perspective. The states are also expected to complete a data needs assessment. That work will happen this fall. States will receive the needs assessments once they've been selected in September. and then we can support and assist in the completion of that needs assessment, which will form the foundation for the 2-year action plan. States will be expected to participate in quarterly check-in calls with Advance CTE. These will be relatively informal conversations just to check in on the progress of the work and identify other areas where Advance CTE can support with technical assistance or other resources. There will also be a mid-grant report in December 2021, and then a final grant report due December 2022.
Austin, before you move on from the needs assessment, there's a question about it in the chat box. Can states have access to the comprehensive needs assessment if they don't apply or are not selected?
Good question. So the needs assessment will be released publicly later this year in December or very early 2021. And the final version that's released to the public will be informed by some of the lessons that we learned from the states that are selected to complete the needs assessment this fall. So the needs assessment will be in it will be further refined before publication. So the states that are selected for this initiative will get kind of an early version and early access to that tool. But yes, it will be eventually made public. That's a good question. So the last expectation for participating states is that they be prepared to share lessons within the cohort as well as with the broader field. So we may call upon states to be highlighted in case studies or to present on webinars or at conferences, depending on what they're working on. So that is another expectation that we have for participants. So just to illustrate what the timeline of activities looks like over the next 12 months, this is just for this is not inclusive of the entire initiative. This is really just kind of the early planning work as well as early implementation. But we are accepting applications through July. States will be selected in September. And then the work will get started this fall with the completion of the needs assessment and action plan. And then implementation will start in early 2021. So again, this is just to help kind of visualize the sequence of activities and where the work will fall for states. The application process is a 2-part process. So the first part is a paper application, which is available online at careertech.org/initiatives. It's a relatively simple application form. We really just want to learn what some of the major challenges are that your state is facing related to post-secondary data quality and what your vision is for addressing some of those challenges. That application form is due on July 17th. And you can email it directly to me. I've got my email address available right here on the screen, as well as on our website. And the second part of the application process will be a phone interview. And those will be conducted on a rolling basis as soon as the application is submitted, and will wrap up at the end of July. And the purpose of the interviews is to address any additional questions that we have from the application and to dig a little bit more into the existing state system, get a better understanding of what the challenges are that the state's facing, and the governance structure for the system, as well as the data system as well. So we've also included a budget template that's uploaded on our website. The template that is due, or the budget that is due with the application on July 17th is for the planning grant only. So let me say that again. The budget is for the planning grant only. That is for the period from September through December 2020. And that is the $15,000 planning grant that will be dispersed in the fall. The reason that we're only asking for a 3-month budget to start off the initiative is because states will be developing their 2-year budget based on the findings of the needs assessment. So we wanted to make sure that states had the flexibility to plan around the challenges that they identify in their needs assessment. We also want to acknowledge that due to current travel restrictions and meeting restrictions, we expect that states might have some challenges spending down that initial planning grant. So I will note, you can carry over those funds into 2021 as long as they are accounted for in the 2-year budget. So that's something that we can provide a little bit of flexibility. We understand without being able to set up meetings or travel, that's a good amount of money to spend in 3 months. So that is a flexibility that we are extending to states. Brian, did you have something?
Yeah, for the interviews, will the entire team need to be present or just the project lead?
Just the project lead will need to be present, although if other folks from the team are available for those interviews and can provide additional context or additional perspectives that are relevant for the application, then we would encourage them to participate. So these are the criteria that we're using for selection of states. So the first thing that we're looking for is whether the state is poised for system-wide change, whether they have the capacity and the right pieces in place and the right buy-in from different actors to really create some change and put some pieces in place that will create some lasting change. The second thing that we're looking at is whether CTE data is a shared priority across different departments at the state leadership level. So if this is something that is a shared priority across agencies, and is something that there's already work underway to try to address, that will be one of the considerations. Third is kind of the ability to benefit from the initiative. So if this is something that having additional funding and additional support from Advance CTE will really help catalyze some of that work that's already happening at the state level, that would be another consideration that we're looking at. And then finally, we want to look at the state's vision for improving post-secondary CTE quality, CTE data quality and use. And the degree to which that vision is achievable and is aligned with the goals of the initiative. All right. And then I've included a list over here of important dates for the application process and the kickoff of the initiative. This is just kind of a reminder of everything that's already included in the RFA and that I've already covered in the slides. But I'd like to, again, pause here and see if anybody has questions that I can address.
Awesome, there's one in the chat box.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Oh, all right.
Are states able to receive more detailed information about what is contained in the needs assessment tool prior to applying, so we have an idea of what we are agreeing to pilot if selected? That is a great question. I'm happy if you want to shoot me an email, I can share. So the needs assessment is in draft form right now, and it's not in a version where I can share it out publicly. But Jonathan, I'd be happy to share kind of an early version of that, or kind of describe some of our thinking around the tool. But I will say our approach to the needs assessment is a comprehensive system-wide approach. We're thinking about it in terms of a CTE data ecosystem, which includes everything from developing business rules and protocols for collecting data, all the way down to establishing routines and processes for making data-informed policy, or building that into your communications plan so that you're telling the story of CTE's impact. So there are a lot of different, and there are a lot of different areas too that states may want to focus on and lean in on, whether that's around kind of building the technical infrastructure to make sure that you're able to link the data and better rely on and validate the data, or if that's more around use of data and focusing on improving program quality and equity. So there are a lot of different areas that states can focus on. And there's quite a bit of flexibility in there too, based on the challenges that you surface through the needs assessment. But again, if anybody wants to see an early version of that tool, please feel free to email me and I can share that with you. So Alex asked, should the cross-sector team contain CTE content or data system experts or a mix of both? That's a great question. So the focus for the initiative is on CTE data quality. So it should be led by post-secondary leaders in the CTE data system. However, our goal is cross-sector alignment, and so it would be really valuable, and I would say essential for bringing in other folks from other systems who have that expertise. And if they're not on the specific cross-sector team, they absolutely should be involved in the completion of the needs assessment. So I would say even if they're not part of kind of the core planning work, they should be involved in the needs assessment to some degree. But that's a good question, Alex. Thanks. Are there any other questions? There are a maximum number of team members. It appears there should be a minimum of 5 representing the sectors. Yes, there is not a maximum. I will say for the national convening in fall 2022, we will cover registration and travel for up to 5 people, but you can involve multiple people on the team. We've set a minimum for 5 people to make sure that there's representation across those different priority sectors. So making sure that we have representation from the secondary level, from the post-secondary level, from the workforce level. However, you are welcome to involve as many people as you think are necessary for this work. And one other note, I don't know that I mentioned this, but the application must be signed by the state CTE director. That's the designated state director. So if that state director is in the post-secondary system already, as I know they are in a number of states, then the office that is applying might be the office in which the state director is involved. But if the state director is in the secondary system, it's important that they are involved in putting together the application and have a chance to review it and sign it before it's submitted. Yes. Rosalind, I see that you asked that question right as I mentioned that. So good timing. So Marilyn, the funding goes to which entity? It would be to the post-secondary system office, whatever office that is, unless you have another entity that would serve as an intermediary. But we can discuss that further in the application process if there's any challenge with distributing funds directly to the post-secondary system office. And Elvin, I'm happy to send these slides. We will be publishing the slides and a recording of today's webinar online at careertech.org/initiatives, but I can send those to you directly. It looks like you included your email address in there too.
Thank you.
Of course. I can send the slides. I don't know that I have everybody's email address. I can double check Zoom. And if I do have everybody's email address, I can share the slides back out with everybody who's on the call today. If not, feel free to shoot me an email and then I can send those to you directly. All right. Are there any other questions? I built in a lot of time to address some Q&A just in case folks have some questions around the application process or the objectives. So I can stick around longer if people have questions that they'd like to ask. Otherwise, we can wrap up early if nobody else has any other questions. The other thing I'll say too is that if you do have any questions that come up as you start to fill out the application, please feel free to contact me by email, and I can set up a short call to unpack some ideas or questions, or I can help clarify anything that's not super clear in the application form or in the RFA. Yes, and I will share my email address. It's aestes@careertech.org. And happy to address any questions. All right. Well, I think that addresses the main questions that came through. So wanted to say, first of all, I'm excited to see how many people are interested in and enthusiastic about this opportunity. Really excited to start digging in and reviewing and reading some of your applications and officially get this work kicked off later this fall. It's going to be a really exciting opportunity. And I know you all are on this call because you, like us, believe in the power of data and high quality data and being able to improve services for students and improve the impact of CTE. So really excited to get to work with some of you in this initiative. Again, reach out if you have any other questions. Otherwise, thank you all for joining this afternoon, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.